tell you why I think motorized sliders are a waste of money, and I've got a few stories for you. Starting with my very first ever slider. 10 years ago, I purchased my first slider, and it was not this very nice motorized one. It was actually a manual slider. It was really cheap, 50 bucks or something. You just push or pull to make the camera move on the slider track. The reason I bought it was because I heard if you didn't have a slider, you were not a filmmaker. So I thought I'll be a better filmmaker if I have this slider. And I thought getting the longest track was the smartest thing to do. I tried using that thing everywhere, indoors, outdoors, in the snow, you name it. And I had a pretty nice tripod. Set it up on my tripod or on the floor or whatever made the most sense. The issues became apparent very quickly. A long slider does not mean it's a good slider. I'm gonna get that perfect shot. Having a long slider introduced a lot of shakiness, a lot of the track getting stuck because it was sort of bend under some weight. Even though I had a T4i Canon camera on it, it just couldn't handle it for whatever reason. When I took it outside, it kind of got stiff in the cold, so it would just go which is completely the opposite of the point of having a slider. So those were my first experiences with a slider. Now fast forward to 2020, when things were getting a little bit cooler, motorized sliders were the thing. So the first motorized slider I used was a really nice one. It was the fancy one from Edelkrone, which is not this one, by the way. It had the motorized head that can tilt and do all sorts of crazy stuff, but there's a lot of issues with it. And even though it was one of the nicest, most expensive ones you could get at the time, I still found that it took a really long time just to get a shot, if you could get a shot. All right, so I've been wasting about 30 minutes just trying to get this ready to keep talking about it. So here we go. Between it deciding if it likes the weight or not, where it's distributed, if that's gonna cause shake or anything like that. Once you get it set up, you still need other things. Obviously you need the tripod, you need a really good video head. You can't really attach one underneath it because that introduces too much weight shift, and then the motors don't like that. And this is pretty much across the board. I've tried many different motorized sliders. I have some on the channel that I might have talked about at one point. They're so finicky. There's so much shaking. Sometimes it'll work on one pass and won't work on the next pass. In my case, right now, my issue is I can't remember how to use this, which I know that sounds ridiculous. It's been in the drawer for 2 years. I haven't touched it in 2 years. That shows you how often I'm using it. But even though it's really straightforward, I can get it to slide back and forth just, pressing the buttons here. That's great, but I wanted to be able to interact with the product. That's the point of having a motorized slider, is you set the in and out points. But even though I have the app, I can't get it to connect because I can't remember how to do it Bluetooth. I have to go look up a video because going to the website or using the QR code here doesn't bring you to a manual. And so it's just one of those frustrating processes that even though it can be useful, and once I maybe get this up and running in, maybe another 30 minutes, it still isn't really functional or useful without the app. But because I can't get it to connect, and maybe that's just because A, it won't connect, or B, I haven't figured out how to do that yet. Regardless, it's so much work. This is a shot that I could have had and been done with the entire project an hour ago, but I've been spending an hour trying to get it set up, never mind tweak everything, get the lighting just right, move all the objects around the product. It is an absolute frustration. And that's my point, is that using a slider, whether manual or motorized, you spend more time setting up the shot than you do getting the shot. And for somebody who's tried using this in professional settings, not just this one, but all the motorized sliders that I've ever used, they are so much work to try to get them to perform every single time. So it doesn't even matter how much time it takes to set up the shot. If it was worth it, I would totally do it, but half the time you can't rely on the shot because jitter, shake, motors decide to stop operating the way they were before. There's so many things that happen that they just kind of become a bit unreliable, especially if you factor in how much it costs to typically get a decent, hopefully reliable motorized slider. And for that, I would say it's a waste of money. I've used products that cost thousands of dollars. I've used ones that cost hundreds of dollars. I've used ones that cost $50. No matter which end of the spectrum you're on, they all have issues. So I'm the first one to say, don't waste your money on a motorized slider because really, you're probably just gonna hate it. They are great maybe for some shots. However, on average, I would say if you're just starting out, save your money, which you probably don't have that much of, and buy something that's actually going to be useful and really work for you. Obviously, the whole point of having a slider is to incorporate movement into your shots. However, you do not need a slider to accomplish that. I have been cheating for like 2-3 years now on getting movement in my shots without using a slider, without using a gimbal, and honestly, really never going handheld. Handheld is a great option. Sometimes handheld looks really good. I'm a big fan of handheld shots, but I actually do something that requires none of that. Let me break it down for you. Okay, it is getting really warm in here, so we're gonna take a second and talk about the sponsor of this portion of the video. The fastest way to get banned on YouTube or social media is through copyright strikes, which is what Soundstripe is gonna help you to avoid. How do you avoid that? By using their music or their sound effects in your videos that are safe to use and won't get you banned from anything. What's that? Do they have cool music and sound effects? Well, there are many genres to choose from. And when you do find a music that you enjoy but you need more options, you can use their similar song feature and it will pull up songs that are very similar to the one you like. And from there, you just download it. Yeah, you're gonna be cooler than good old David here. Use the discount down in the description. It's gonna save you some money. All right, I'm done. Let's get back to the video. So how I get movement in my shots. A really good tripod is utterly necessary. You need a really good video head so that you can get that tilting motion. And honestly, this is just so you can get the camera in exactly the precise spot you want it to be in. And then all you need is a nice camera with a good lens. You don't even need one with autofocus, to be fair. I use manual focus all the time because it is the most reliable. All right, so this is our product. I'm gonna have it centered. This is our backdrop. It's this old wooden chest. And this is a leather travel case. Holds the passport, credit cards, and so on. So we're gonna showcase that, but we're also gonna make it look travel themed around it. So I've got some greenery, because that's just always nice for foreground. I might move that in a second. I've got a lens, because people, take pictures when they travel, an SD card, I'll put that here. I've got some Euros and stuff, so I'm gonna set it up so that they're kind of around it in a kind of nonchalant sort of way. In this case, these are my interactive pieces, so I will be sliding them in as the shot is happening. So let's see how this goes. I have it on a wider shot because if I pulled in like this, it looks okay, but I want to start here because like I said, we're going to incorporate movement. So it's a tripod shot, it's locked off, nothing changes. I'm going to show myself interacting with the product. So I'm going to open it. I'm going to take the passport, slide it in, put in the cards, and this way, kind of shows people how it's going to be used. I can close it up and then pull it away. Now, that was a bit fast. I would do this a lot slower. So I'm going to shoot a real shot and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to edit it. It's really simple. All I do is take the shot and I add just the littlest bit of a push in post. All you do is set up the start point and the end point, just a little casual push in. It does not need to be crazy and especially not fast, so something just really subtle. And it sells the fact that there's movement. It's technically cheating. You don't get the same movement that you get if you were to use a slider to do the push in, because obviously the objects will be shifting because the camera is moving in space. Whereas in this case, the camera's not moving, the footage is moving closer to the viewer rather than the camera moving. So it definitely gets a different feel, but it is a way that you can fake some movement. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination saying that it replaces a slider. There's a time and place for that. But like I already pointed out, a slider has so many complications involved with it. Unless you're doing a really huge production where you're not using a slider, obviously, you're gonna be using a dolly system. Those are much more smoother, controlled, but they also take a lot more time to set up, obviously, and they cost a lot of money. But at that point, you're doing a huge production, it makes sense. But hey, that's my experience. Maybe yours has been better than that. Would love to hear what your thoughts are on if a slider is a waste of money for you. First, I'm gonna put this away. Come on, give me my battery back. Shit. Okay, got the freaking battery off. Sheesh.